Hello and welcome to Melomaniax, the podcast where we take unbiased deep dives into the biggest musicians and bands of all time. I'm Ashton.
And I'm Dallas. Before we dive in today, if you guys want to get a backstage pass to the show, bonus episodes, weird music history, all that kind of stuff, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Melomaniax. $5 a month, you're going to get bonus episodes, early drops, access to our private Discord community where we chat music, and a whole lot more. So help us keep these deep dives coming and join the crew today. Without further ado, let's get into it. Ashton, what does today's episode look like?
Today we're going to be discussing all things Autotune. Just to clear the air, I guess, in a way. We see a lot of confusion about what Autotune truly is. And this I guess this idea topic really came from just seeing so many comments on YouTube Shorts and Instagram Shorts and whatnot, where it's somebody singing or whatever, or even a song that's posted, and they just talk about, oh, no auto-tune, like this is raw talent, this, that. While raw talent is a thing with singing, auto-tune is on just about basically everything that comes across your ears. That's like goes through a recording studio. Obviously, if it's just a live video of somebody with their phone, it's not, there's no auto-tune on it, but so anyways, this was just something that kind of was frustrating for me, but I also know that you have some of the same frustrations, if not slightly different. But, you also kind of are like, auto-tune is everywhere. And there's a lot of hypocrites within the auto-tune scene that we'll get into as well. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think auto-tune is just widely misunderstood. I think people, I don't know the best way to say it, but I think people, they can hear it. The average person can hear it when it's like T-Pain effect or Cher or something like that, which we'll talk about later. But most people don't know when it's being used and when it's not, and they couldn't tell you. But they think they can. That's the tricky part. So people will hear something that's been tuned, and they'll be like, wow, raw talent, no auto-tune, I love it. And it's like, well, this was tuned.
Yeah. Has it all over it.
It's the same thing in the guitar space. We deal a lot with the argument of, are live amps better than like amp modelers and things like that. It's kind of the same thing. But we were playing with LA Guns one time, and they had all their amps stacked behind us, and we were opening for them. But we just had our quad Cortexes, our little modelers, on the floor in front of us. And somebody came up after him and was like, man, it's so good to hear young bands playing real amps. And we did not have the heart to tell him he was hearing our modelers. But that's the same thing. Somebody walking up like, oh, wow, it's so good to hear a band that doesn't use auto-tune. And you're just thinking like, yeah, we tuned all of the vocals. Like, that's what you have to do to bring it up to a pro level,
Yeah, exactly. And so really, and you'll be able to do this a lot better than me, but as part of explaining what auto-tune is, well, I guess I can kind of read it. So I kind of pulled up, before the show, we kind of read through like some Wikipedia page stuff. I don't know if what software do you have personally that you use?
I use a combination of Autotune and Melodyne.
Okay, so you use both. Those are, for anybody that doesn't know, Autotune, those are actual like just audio like software for your computer or whatever. And essentially you can put vocals into it, and it's just going to adjust them to perfect whatever note you set it to, really. And the further away,
basically, like, so it's gonna take you. So what you sang, you sang a line, you import that into Autotune, which runs inside your DAW, your digital audio workstation, which for me would be Pro Tools. And you open up Autotune, you import the line you sang, and it'll analyze it first and tell you, okay, here you sang a C sharp, and then you went to a C, and then you went to a G. And it'll also tell you like, okay, well, on that C sharp, you were actually a little sharp. You were a little too far past the C sharp, which is fine. We're humans. We don't have, we're not robots. We're not a piano that you can just tune. We have to make the sound with our body. So you could take that C sharp and select it and say, oh, we were, 38 cents sharp, and it's sounding a little sour in the mix. So I'm just going to grab that C sharp and just drag it down a little bit and lock it into an actual real C sharp. And then you play it back and you hear it, and it sounds all locked in. Then there's a knob called the retune speed that is determining how fast Autotune's going to capture your pitch and correct it. So basically, the bigger the retune speed, the longer it takes, the more natural it sounds. And if you bring that down to 0, you get what became known as the T-Pain effect and the Cher effect, because it's instantly correcting to 100% accuracy your note, which sounds very unnatural. And we've all heard that in any T-Pain song or Daft Punk or things like that. You've heard that effect. Yeah. Didn't know what it meant probably, but that's how you get that effect, which is really funny. When sometimes I'll send text to the guys or something, videos of, I'll just take one of our songs and drag the retune speed down to 0, and it sounds really funny.
Yeah, I remember messing with that with you one time way back, just trying to like recreate that kind of stuff. It's actually kind of tough to like make good sounding auto-tune gimmicky stuff.
Yeah,
it's not as easy as people think.
And what I just described is would be called the graphical tune, where you import it, it throws it out on a graph. There's another option, which I call blanket tune, but you can call it whatever you want. It's where you just load the plugin, and instead of dealing with stuff line by line, you just set the key and adjust the settings, retune, that kind of stuff, and it'll take everything you sang for the whole thing, and it'll grab a little peak here, a little sharp, a little flat here. It'll lock those in.
Okay,
that's what that's kind of where the auto-tune side comes in. It just automatically tunes based on the key that you set. So there's a skill in knowing exactly what key to set, because we do a lot of kind of rock country stuff, which has a lot of keys that aren't just like a normal major key. It might be like a mixolydian or something like that. So you have to know exactly what notes you're singing and which ones to choose and leave out. And then you also, if you're doing that, you also have to sing good, because if you sing too sharp, it's going to grab you and pull you to the wrong note. Or if you sing too flat, it grabs you and pulls you to the wrong note there too. So you have to be pretty close enough, within 50 cents of your pitch. I believe there's 100 cents before it changes to the next note. So you got to be pretty tight, and it'll just grab. What it does is it just grabs those little tiny errors and just locks them in, and that's going to give you more of a pro polish like to your record. And that's what you're hearing on pretty much everything. And that's not something you really hear. You just hear good singing.
Yeah.
You don't, and if you took it off, it wouldn't sound bad. It's not like it's doing a ton of work. It's just light touch-ups here and there, basically.
Yeah. So you need to be a good singer for auto-tune to work. Truly, like it basically,
or you need to be a really good engineer to take a bad singer and turn them good. And the problem with that is eventually it's going to just be found out that they're not a good singer, because they're going to probably do concerts and stuff. You could run auto-tune there too, but that's a little trickier and a little more rare.
Yeah,
or a lot more rare.
I was going to say they definitely do the live auto-tune for a lot of the hip hop stuff. But so we were you were talking about so much with like, adjusting the vocals and whatnot. So Autotune first came out, that specific software was released September 19th, 1997. So Autotune is pretty recent still, I'd say, in the music industry itself as a whole. And so we had Autotune in 97, and then it wasn't really popularized as like, people using it as like I said, a gimmick is, when I say a gimmick, I'm just talking about like what T-Pain does, where you do the intentional robotic stuff. So that wasn't actually used as a gimmick until 98 when Cher used it in her song Believe. And so that was like one of the first like songs where they actually used it as a sound effect instead of just for its normal intents and purposes. But I was going to have you go over what people... we were going to talk a little bit about what did people do before Autotune then? Was everybody just a perfect singer? No. Autotune, I feel like, mainly was created to save time more than anything, because prior to Autotune, so way back in the day, what was it, through like the 60s and maybe early 70s and prior, song recordings were done from start to finish. The whole song was recorded, and if anyone messed up, you had to record the whole song over again. And so that's kind of how that was. So if you messed up singing, you were doing the whole song over. And then multi-track came out, which let people basically just record small parts of the song, and you could paste that over. So you would record the whole song, and if you had any issues, you would just re-record the issues, and you could paste that over the original recording. So then that's how they used, fixed any kind of tuning issues. So you basically just had to have the singer do it on repeat until they got it right. Whereas now they just need to do it until they're close enough, you know,
Yeah.
which saves
And
tons
keep in mind,
of time.
when you say cut and paste, you're talking about tape. So it literally was scissors and tape, like cutting and pasting.
Yeah.
and and splicing that in with other stuff. And people got really good at that. But obviously that is super time consuming and hyper specific to only a few people that got really good at that in the best, recording studios in the world. So that's when Pro Tools was invented, because it took all that and flipped it on its head and said, okay, now we can put this in a computer and you can do it all instantly. You have a lot more power, a lot more flexibility to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's funny. I feel like Autotune was like all good things are turned into evil. So it's like originally just with the most like helpful intentions, just to save time and be like a great tool and resource for engineers and, developers and whatnot.
Well, some people get their pride and their ego involved, and it's like, oh, we don't use Autotune. And it's like, who cares? Like, nobody, the reason we're doing this episode is because nobody knows what that means or what you're talking about. Like, that's like me saying, like, oh, I play 11s on my guitar. It's like, who gives a shit? Just play something good. Like,
yeah, we just want a professional product, and Autotune helps you release a more professional product.
And the problem is, you're going to release your song without Autotune. It's not going to sound up to a professional standard, or maybe it does, but that's rare. So let's assume you're a normal human. It's not going to stack up to the professional standard of all the pros around you that are using it. So what happens is now I'm on Spotify shuffling through, and I hear this song that comes on that just sounds noticeably worse than the song before it and after it. So I'm like, oh, this guy's not that good. Skip,
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't even necessarily mean you're a bad singer. It just means, you didn't put on that. Like, you want to mix and master your albums to a pro standard. You don't want to just put random stuff out that doesn't sound good.
So let's talk about some of that negativity. I know we're kind of looking at it before we went live about, seems like a lot of the negativity on Autotune within the music space, like, is a lot of people don't like the way hip hop uses Autotune nowadays, as far as just like a vocal effect. And I could kind of see like maybe a regular artist who knows about Autotune and uses it, but they're just like a proper singer. I could see them like being a little upset that people are like putting a bad name on Autotune by using it for those effects. If that makes sense, like that might be part of the issue that's starting to.
Well, the whole thing with Autotune, it was invented so that you never knew its name. It was designed to fix pitch inaccuracies and stuff quietly, and so you didn't notice it was there. So then people figured out how to use it as an actual effect.
And that brought light to it.
Yeah, so, and that put it in the front lines.
So like, nobody ever would have known about Autotune had nobody decided to use it for that intentional, like, so that makes sense. So it definitely was just like the intentional use of it as a vocal effect that started the controversy. It seems like. Because I'm not sure if Cher never used it on a big song, and then like T-Pain never used it, and as far as for the specific ways that they used it, would anybody ever really know that it existed? Like you said, it would just be in the background.
Yeah, I like what they said here in the Wikipedia for Autotune. I'll read it to you here. Autotune was initially intended to disguise or correct off-key inaccuracies, allowing vocal tracks to be perfectly tuned. That's it. It was initially intended to disguise or correct off-key inaccuracies. And that could have been for a number of reasons. So if you've ever been to a recording studio, they are at the cheapest, $80 to $150 an hour, and at the most expensive, thousands of dollars an hour. When you're paying thousands of dollars an hour to be somewhere, have a bunch of people in one place working for you, time is of the essence. You want stuff to be done quickly. And if you sing a perfect take in one note sharp, pull out Autotune. We're moving on. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's stuff like that's where the invention of these kind of tools comes in. Because it's like, okay, we're paying $180,000 to make this album because we have 6 engineers in there night and day cutting tape. It's like, well, let's invent Pro Tools, and that $180,000 turns into $30,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
Who doesn't want to do that? Like,
Yeah, that just sounds perfect. So it's we were reading some in this negative section on here, there's been some like protests and whatnot. So like the 51st Grammy Awards, which was in 2009, band called Death Cab for Cutie all came on stage wearing blue ribbons that protested the use of Autotune. And then later in that year, Jay-Z titled a single from his album, DOA, Death of Autotune. His Jay-Z's more so issue was like specifically with how people are using it in the hip hop kind of scene. I'd be curious to see how much Autotune is used in rap, like in general, as far as like just regular, like their syllables are so quick and short, and I don't really know anything about the pitch of rapping. But I'm actually kind of curious.
It's almost certainly
that.
not used for that.
That's why I was like, it might
like,
make it sound weird.
Sometimes they do kind of those pitched raps where they're kind of singing but rapping. You would have to have a pitch to it. If you're just rapping.
Yeah, they put Kanye does that.
Like that's not going to be Autotune. Autotune's not going to grab. It's speaking's not really. I mean, it is a pitch, but not in the way that Autotune sees it. Let me yell at my dog real quick. 1 second.
Yeah. I'm reading on. Okay, I'm reading on the. More on the Jay-Z. Yeah, it was just he doesn't like it as used as the gimmick, and that would make sense that like
that's interesting.
Rappers don't use it too much.
Yeah, so here's a tip for everyone. If you ever find yourself hating on a new piece of technology, all right, what's Penny doing? Hold on, we're gonna pause for 1 second. If you ever find yourself on the side of like a new technology being like, oh, this isn't good, that's a red flag. You really need to stop and think about exactly what's going on there, because so often that's kind of an like old man outdated mentality,
Yeah.
So in Jay-Z's case, it's like, oh, I don't like the gimmick of Autotune. It's like, well, I mean, that's the exact same as people being like, I don't like Elvis shaking his hips. You know what I mean? That's the exact same attitude.
Yep.
So it's like those kind of attitudes always look bad in hindsight. Never has that been like a good attitude. Like, people protesting the invention of the car, stuff like that. Like it's always something new that comes along that people protest. Radio hating on TV, saying it's never going to make it. TV or films rather, films hating on TV, saying TV's never going to make it. Radio shows hating on podcasts, saying podcasts are never going to make it. Now they're all but obsolete, and it's only podcasts. Like it's just there's never a time where that's been like a correct. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when something comes along, if your gut reaction is like, I hate that, really stop and analyze. Am I saying that just because it's new? Like, what's the validity here? Things like that. Because that was a cool effect. I would say it's like, the first use of like distorted guitar. It's like, I'm sure people were like, that's not real guitar, but now it's like the coolest thing ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just you have to give it its time. And it's almost 30 years old. So it's not even like, yeah, which is it's a while, but also it's not, I don't know. It's interesting. I like this, I like this quote here it's not a quote, but like it was what Michael Bublé said about it, where he criticized Autotune and said everyone sounds the same, like robots, but then also said he uses it when he records his pop music, which is true. But even funnier
that's
than
because that's coming back to the point. Sorry, go ahead. I'll interject in a second.
All right. And then that led into, it says Ellie Goulding and Ed Sheeran have called for a live means live, and they are specifically campaigning for no Autotune at live shows, which is interesting.
So the thing with Autotune that I think confuses so many people, I'm kind of piecing this together as we go, is you're really dealing with two different things. You're dealing with the kind of T-Pain effect. That's what 99% of people think you're talking about when you say Autotune.
Yep.
And then you're dealing with the intended invention of Autotune, which is, if I'm using it correctly, you never know it was used. You never know it was there. By that definition, if you're not using it live, if you're not using it on albums, if you are using it, I shouldn't know either way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it should all sound...
So the only way you would be able to know is if it was done poorly, so it's overtly, and you can actually hear it in the song, which is not the T-Pain effect. That's like, so if let's say 0% is perfectly using Autotune, you have no idea it's there, and the vocal sounds awesome, or 100% is like full T-Pain. If you're at like that 50-60% mark, that's where like you're starting to kind of hear what Autotune sounds like. So it's leaning in a little bit of that T-Pain effect on like some notes, but then sometimes you're not hearing it. So that would be a poor use of Autotune. You want to make sure you're using it to the point that it's not obvious, if that's what you're going for. And if that's the case, then no one's going to know. So it's like, that's a hard thing for me to wrap my head around. Like, because then you could just say, oh, we're not using it. And then you don't realize, but your engineer's out front like, this guy sounds like dog shit. I got to throw it on. Like, you know what I mean? I can't have 30,000 people hear this. Like, I got to do my job and make it sound good, you know?
Yeah. Another reason that people can't really detect it is most of us don't have perfect pitch. So it's not like we're listening to them sing and go, oh, like you said, oh, they were slightly sharp there. Like, if they were very sharp, you can usually, most people can hear it.
Yeah, you'll hear it.
It's only going to be
a certain point.
It's only going to be a very, very trained ear that can actually hear the imperfections in human vocals.
Yeah,
like
definitely. I'll add to that, though. I'll say exactly what you said, but take it a step further. Perfect pitch, you would be able to tell what note they're singing, what note they should have been singing, how far out they were, that kind of stuff. But to a regular person that even doesn't know anything about music, what you'll notice is, oh, that just sounds bad. You won't know why. You won't know that they were singing a C sharp that was 60 cents sharp and was actually closer to a D than a C sharp, like someone with perfect pitch would. You won't know that, but you will know that doesn't sound good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the thing right there. It's like, I say lay people, just the normal person who doesn't have anything to do with music as a profession or even a hobby, just your casual person listening to the radio or whatever. They have much better ears than you think because popular music has been trained into them for a long time. Like if I were to play a chord progression and swap one of the chords from major to minor, their ear would perk up and be like, what? That sounds weird. Something's weird about that. And they don't know what it is, but they can tell. And they can tell when something's out of tune or things like that. They don't have words for this. They can't describe exactly what's wrong. Couldn't tell you how to fix it, but they can tell you something's off there. That's not tracking with my ear.
Yeah,
and that's because the music industry over decades has trained people in this way.
Yeah, isn't it weird
unintentionally,
how
but it has
different musical sounds just have like different effects on emotion stuff, even like, but at like a gut level. So even somebody that doesn't know anything about music, like you said, can hear like a minor note versus a major and like have an actual like emotional response to both sounds. It's kind of interesting. I wonder if there's like a study on, I'm sure there's courses you can take on just like why minor notes sound like depressing.
Oh, ear training. Ear training is awesome. If you ever want to have fun, go down the rabbit hole of ear training. There's apps, there's courses, there's all kinds of fun stuff. But yeah, I've done ear training, 15 years now. So I have a pretty good ear. When I'm in a restaurant, I can tell you kind of what's going on the radio, what chords they're playing, things like that. I don't have perfect pitch, so I couldn't tell you the key, but I could grab a guitar real quick and play along.
And figure it out.
Fast enough that you would think like, oh, he might have perfect pitch, you know what I mean? But I don't have true perfect pitch. True perfect pitch is, and this is not meant to sound offensive in any way, but it's almost like a disease. It's just something you're born with. It's not something you can develop or train. What you can develop and train is called relative pitch, but perfect pitch is just something you have or you don't. And almost everyone does not.
It's like,
and what that means is I can smack a piano as I'm walking by, and you can say, "Oh, you hit a G, C sharp, and an A," and you didn't hear any music before that. You have nothing to relate it to, and you just know immediately what it is. That's perfect pitch. Whereas if you play a C chord for me, and I hear a C chord, and I kind of get that in my head, and then you play a G note, I could say, "Oh, that was a G," because that's called relative pitch. I had a bass line to work from, and from that bass line, I can relate what I hear back to that bass line. But I need that bass line. Someone with perfect pitch does not.
Yeah, perfect pitch is kind of like having a photographic memory. It's like those people superpowers that not everybody has. That's super off topic, but I think, when people say we only use a very small percentage of our brains, I think if we had access to the whole thing, we would all have these, things like photographic memory, perfect pitch, like all those like special, kind of like those special ability type things that are pretty rare, but it'd be cool to have like all that together. That's like where you get onto genius levels of people where they have all these things starting to like stack up combined.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But perfect pitch is a It's
Perfect
such
pitch is
an
a cool thing. I'd
interesting
encourage
one.
people. Yeah, I'd encourage people to go look it up and learn about it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like watching videos of perfect pitch kids.
Yeah, Rick Beato's son had it. And he's blown up on YouTube now. He's absolutely massive. But we recorded with him in 2013 when Dylan was just a little kid, and he would come in the studio, and it was pretty impressive what he could do even then at like 8-9 years old. Rick would just literally like slam his hands on the piano randomly, and it would just sound like noise. And Dylan would be like G sharp, A, F, C, like call out all the notes that he just played, like. And he was like 9 or something.
Perfect pitch is almost like a photographic memory, but with sound.
Yeah.
Like in a way, if you're hearing 8 notes at once, for your brain to be able to track all 8 at once and then like individually go through them is so insane to me. Like that is multitasking that I cannot, a level of multitasking that I cannot fathom.
Yeah. It's crazy. But it's like, I've heard it related to like, I hold up an index card that's blue and you say, oh, that's blue. Like that kind of thing. Like it doesn't take any effort on your part to know that's blue. It's that same kind of thing. Like if I held up 3 cards, red, blue, green, you'd be like, okay, that was red, blue, and green. It's that same kind of like thing. It's just something that they have that we don't have. So it doesn't make sense to us, but to them, it's just that easy. My thing that I always think about is I wonder how many people have perfect pitch that go their whole lives not really getting into music or realizing that's what they have.
Yeah, right?
I assume you'd be drawn to music because you have it, but there's got to be at least a person or two that like realized they had perfect pitch in like their 50s or 60s when another musician was like, what'd you just say? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right? They just had this like random like, oh.
I noticed we did summer camp and we had some kids in there, and I noticed a kid had perfect pitch in there because every time I'd play a chord, like I played a chord one time, my back was to him and he was like, oh, it's a G or whatever. And I looked down, I was like, yeah, that is a G. I think he has perfect pitch. So I kind of kept tabs on him. And one of the days I asked him, I was like, do you have perfect pitch? He was like, yeah. It's like, I thought so.
Nice. Able to figure it out.
Yeah. It's just no, you just know what it is.
Yep. It's good that he was around music enough then to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a pretty talented kid, but he didn't seem like he really wanted to pursue or do music. I was like, interesting.
Oh, dude. So I'm still looking through the Wikipedia page. One of the first rapping through Autotune was Eiffel 65 in 1999.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good example of kind of that T-Pain effect.
I forgot about Eiffel 65.
Yeah.
Yeah, with like, they definitely did nothing but Autotune.
Mm-hmm. 100%. So we talked about negativity from artists. What about negativity from like listeners and stuff?
Yeah, so I don't think it seems like people have as many issues. This is where the misunderstanding comes through, I think, is they don't specifically focus on like the gimmicks in hip hop and rapping with Autotune. They more so just think that like that Autotune only exists within that space and every other artist outside of it doesn't use Autotune. And that's where I think they're all mistaken or just misunderstanding. Like, no, Autotune is used throughout the entire music industry. Like your favorite artist probably has Autotune. They might not, and you made a point that some of the artists might not know that they're using Autotune because they're not
Depends on how much power they have. If you're like a solo artist and you're in charge and you're, not with a label or something, like you probably have a lot of control over what's going on. If you're a major artist signed with a major label, they're hiring producers, they're footing the bill. You probably come in and sing, 2 hours of singing, and then you go home to your mansion and the engineers stay behind and do whatever they need to do, whether that's tune or not. And then your album comes out and you don't really know, like you didn't, have a whole lot of say in the mix notes or anything like that. That was all producers and label people and stuff. You're just kind of the face and the voice,
Exactly. Yeah.
But every artist is different. So that's not to say that just because you're on a major label, that's how it works. Because like I saw plenty of videos of Ariana Grande, like deeply editing her own vocals on Pro Tools. Like she's actually pretty good at it. So that's a awesome skill. I love seeing stuff like that.
I was watching that SNL skit she was in. Like it's the one with Domingo or whatever, but like her having to sing off pitch must have been
Oh
pretty.
yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
like that far off pitch. I feel like maybe it's tough, maybe it's not. I don't know. But like when your whole career has been singing and like staying on
when I
pitch.
go to sing quote bad, I just sing on my crack like ah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess her voice did crack like a couple of times, but it was interesting. I was like, that probably takes like a lot of focus to like not put out at least one good note because they were all bad.
Yeah,
But it had
that's
to be
what I heard
like within
in School of Rock. The Miranda Cosgrove's character, the little girl that was like super bossy and couldn't sing at all.
couldn't sing. Yeah,
She's actually a really good singer. So I remember seeing an interview sometime where someone said they had to do that take a bunch of times because she kept singing it too good. You know that part where she goes,
Yeah.
"Memories all alone in the moonlight."
Light.
Jack Black goes,
Yeah.
stop. Apparently they had to do that a bunch of times because she actually is a very good singer. Even at that time when she was a little kid, which is kind of crazy.
I bet she. So for the memories, like in the movie, she's like flat through that whole note. I'm guessing she kept accidentally like.
I don't even know. I honestly didn't. I don't remember it actually sounding that bad. It was just, she's
trying to sound like
force
talk
it to sound
singing.
bad. Yeah.
And
But yeah, that's pretty funny. Real quick, we wanted to talk about some alternatives to Autotune. So we were talking a little bit before we went live that I think a lot of the stigma around Autotune is literally because it's just named Autotune.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know. Like that's just such a funny name. It's like naming yourself, good headphones, and you make headphones, whatever, that kind of thing. But there's all sorts of other softwares like Melodyne. You never hear anyone talk about Melodyne and the stigmas around Melodyne. Melodyne's probably more widely used than Autotune, to be honest. It's a lot more detailed, and you can do a lot more with it. So what I typically do is I put Autotune on in what I called blanket tune from earlier, which is really subtle, really low, just catching little things here and there. And if I have a line that I really like that is still not hitting it, I'll pull up Melodyne, and that's where I'll get detailed and make sure it works. And if it's bad enough, I'll just go back in and re-record it because we have the power to do that. So, but sometimes there's something magic, like, oh, I really like the tone here. I could do 100 more takes, but there's something magic about this, but it's just a little bit sharp, things like that. That's when you want to pull in the tuning. You don't just want to sing bad and then go in and tune it. That's not helping anybody really.
Well, I like that you use them in tandem. That's cool.
Yeah.
That like they work together.
Yep. Stuff's got to be right though. You want it to be right. So use all the tools. It's like building a house and say, well, I'm only going to use this hammer and these nails. It's like, well, you have so many other things you can use. Why would you not do that? Like you're going to make a shit house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, hey, we have all these tools now. Use them. So it's kind of like that is what I would say. It's just another tool in the tool belt to have. Do you need it every time? I don't know. That's up to you. Do you want to use it? That's also up to you. I don't care. You might be really prideful and say, I don't need Autotune. That's fine too. And if you sound awesome, wow, that's really good. But that's just, we're humans usually, and we don't want to spend hours and hours and hours in a recording studio doing line by line, like Appetite for Destruction was recorded that way. At least that's what I've heard. So there's shortcuts now that'll help us get stuff done faster because things move fast now. Like my band's we release music every 2 months. So we don't have a lot of time to, mess around and like tweak endlessly. We just got to get it done and get it out. And over the time that we release stuff gets better, but we don't have time to be, perfect or anything like that.
Yeah.
So far so good. Haven't had any issues. Somebody replied on one of our songs and said, try singing without Autotune. And I know exactly how much Autotune's on the song because I put it on there myself. It's not very much. So I replied to him. I said, try singing at all.
Nice. Oh, man.
I get sassy when people get rude.
Oh, yeah. But
I got no qualms.
We just wanted to clear up the Autotune hate, the misunderstanding. It's not something people should view as negatively or anything. It's just another tool within the music recording space that is helpful and saves a lot of time, and everybody uses it. And if they don't, they probably should be, just to make a more polished product, save themselves some time, because time is money. And especially in that music business, it is a quick moving beast. So
Yep.
We just wanted to clear this up. I'm tired of seeing these auto-tune comments all over the place. We're gonna lower them by 5% at least, just
Wow,
from this
that's
podcast.
bold.
I
That's
know,
bold.
big numbers.
I love
But
that though. Yeah, I would say for our listeners who are music fans that have proven they're deeper into the world of music. It doesn't mean you have to play an instrument or anything like that. You just have to be more interested in music than your average person. That's typically who our fans are. You've already proven that. So, dive deeper on Autotune, learn a little more about it, and have the most well-informed opinion you can. And if you come to the same conclusion, that's fine. But then at least you'll have, the reasons behind it.
yeah, and you'll be able to back up your argument a little better after you research it. So it's
Yeah, because there's definitely still an argument like, oh, well, you shouldn't use it at all. Like, I totally understand why someone would say that. I think that's a little too much pride and ego coming in as opposed to just like being a team player, but that's just me. That's my opinion.
yep. And
Like my one goal when we sit down to make a song is what's going to make this song sound the best that we can make it sound with what we have right now. What tools do we have? What resources? What do we got to do to make this song right in front of my face sound the best it can right now? And if that's autotune, then I'm throwing it on there. I'm not going to even think twice. That's the only question we try to ask. What makes this sound the best?
Well, I think that wraps up basically what I wanted to get covered today. So
Nice. Sweet. Well,
good
yeah,
one.
thank you guys for being here. We appreciate it. Again, check out that Patreon for extra stuff. We got all sorts of cool stuff there for $5 a month. So would encourage you to check that out. We recently revamped it. So let us know what you think and say hello when you're in the Discord as well. So until next time, this has been the Autotune Show by Melomaniax. We'll see you guys later.